this workshop. And I'm Valerio Sbragaglia, and I need to say thank you to Paul, Venturelli, and Asta
Audzijonyte.
Okay, for helping me organizing this workshop or special sessions, whatever. And the idea is to speak about the integration of digital recreational fisheries data in research and monitoring of recreational fisheries, obviously. So I like these photos because Paul is super happy, Asta is super relaxed, and I'm frozen. So recreational fishing research is not only happiness and relaxing, but it was 0 degrees, and I was sampling into the water. I was suffering, and my face is telling that. So first of all, what we mean with digital fisheries data. We are referring to those data like data that are passively or actively generated by recreational fishers and stored, archived online. Okay? And this definition came from conservation culturomics and ecology fields that are research approaches in conservation science. And basically, the main difference is that if on one side of actively individual generated data, on this side of the graph, could be fishing apps in which recreational fishers are sharing information and data, and they are aware that are sharing this information with a research institution, with a management agency, or with the owner of the app. In the other case, these data are passively generated when recreational fishers are sharing on social media, for example, YouTube. They have a YouTube channel, they are sharing videos, but they don't know sometimes that this data can be used for research. And this is quite important from a privacy and legal perspective of how we use this kind of data. So if you look at the vertical axis, we have this individual data and also aggregated data, such as Wikipedia or Google Trends. And you can see that with individual generated data, we can tackle and understand, for example, recreational fishers' behavior, then sometimes social norms, participatory cultures on these platforms, and also with Google Trends and Wikipedia, we can enlarge our view and have a societal perspective of a topic, for example, recreational fisheries. So these are some examples. Probably fishing apps are the mostly established methods between these. In the last few years, there were an emerging push of papers using social media data and also other kind of connected device like Fish Finder. And what these kind of data have in common is that they are freely available. Paul will smile because sometimes it's not very easy to get this data, or other times social media can shut up the sharing of this information with the public, like the API of Twitter. No? There was a big discussion a few days ago. The other commonality is that you can use this data for ecological and social aspects of recreational fisheries. And sometimes you can also have a near real-time monitoring of this kind of data. But also what we realized from our perspective, and this is what we want to share with you, is that these data are not well integrated into monitoring and research in recreational fisheries. And this is why we created and organized this workshop. So the goals of the workshops are, first of all, to inform people that are not fully aware of this methodology, then exchange expertise of people that are using this methodology, but they are not in contact. But most importantly, the third goal is to synthesize new robust evidences on how digital fisheries data can supplement traditional monitoring methods. And the how is in red because we have the assumptions that there are barriers that are preventing the integration of such data in monitoring and research. So we would like to understand and share our thoughts with you and have your feedback in if you perceive that there are these barriers, what we can do to break them, and why these barriers are there. So we have 3 speed talks, one from Asta, then Paul, and then me. And feel free to jump in, ask questions, and interrupt as much as you want, because we have an anarchy here. It's not following the same structure of the conference. So I will give the word to Asta.
Now, how do I use this? Just the slides like that. Okay. Yep.
So before that, I will share a module. So you just write your name and email, and maybe we will share another survey with you later on.
Yeah. So, thanks. I will start. So, whenever I'm asked to pronounce my surname, everybody laughs. That's very funny. So, I'm Lithuanian, and everybody in Lithuania has very complicated surnames. I work at University of Tasmania, but also have a part-time position at Lithuania at Nature Research Center. And Lithuania is a very small country, and we're almost never on the map of any charts. But I saw it today on the keynote speakers, one of the slides, which says the second largest participation rate in the world in recreational fishing, 30%. So we know that recreational fishing is a huge force, large impact on freshwater and coastal populations. It's low, but it's also local food and means well-being. And so there are these estimates that there are 220 million recreational fishers around the world, 220 million people who care about fishing. I'm just seeing what's happened. And so it's very hard to collect data about this. We've heard it already. But there are hundreds already of apps, social media, and citizen science programs that have started and they are running. So these are some of them that I have personally already interacted with, where we discussed, where we looked at data sharing options, in fact, collaborating with some of them. And the fact is that these apps are already collecting millions of observations. They engage millions of users already. That's very important data. It's also urgently needed data. These are not my slides, sorry. These are not my slides, actually. This is from my other talk. No, this has all got mixed up. Sorry, these are not my slides. I mean, they're my slides, but anyway. All right, so I have to now make something up. I don't know where these slides came from and why they're here, or maybe I just sent wrong ones, whatever. Okay, so I just have to make something up. I'm looking and wondering, why is it? Okay, so what happened? So during the pandemic, I was in Lithuania. We were planning only to be there for a short time, but we got stuck with my family and we couldn't come back because Australian borders were closed. So I ended up being there for 1.5 years. And since recreational fishing in Lithuania is very popular, 30% of population, yet by some estimates, yet there is no data at all, actually. There is just a few researchers who do a few surveys. And when I ask managers, how many people do you think go fishing every day? They will say 300, others will say 300,000. So basically no idea. And so we had a few years, we had a project for a few years, and so we wanted to do some work on that, and we established collaboration with 2 industry partners. So one of them is this company, DEPA, who are making these sonar fish finding devices, DEPA Sonar so-called. This is a Lithuanian startup, but now it's a global company. And so they're making these devices and anglers are using them to map the seafloor, but also to find fish. And so basically, we established a data sharing collaborative agreement where we are getting anonymous data from them about angling effort. So now I'm trying to, it's a bit, I don't have actually the slides to show you our results. But basically what we did is that we were able to calibrate this data. So, and then at the same time, because we didn't know how much of, so, okay, sorry, I'm trying to quickly make up what I was going to say. Right, so this data from the sonar device is actually giving us information about users using the device every, sort of the anonymous data about the location and the time of the fishing event, basically the ones who are using. We don't know how many people are using this device at a given time, so basically this information has to be calibrated. So then we also teamed up with this company, Thrust, who are flying drones, and so they developed a machine learning method, so they fly over a fairly large area. In 1 hour, they can survey about 60 square kilometers, and then in about 1 hour, they get an automatic machine learning method that will actually count all the anglers at that time. And this actually allowed us to estimate fishing effort, to basically calibrate how this device usage correlates to the actual angler numbers. And in the end, what that meant was that we applied some statistical methods, Bayesian methods, to have a look, to find out that at least in Lithuania, we could actually have very narrow confidence intervals about the estimated angling efforts. So when we compare the number of app users and number of real anglers that were counted with drones, we find that the confidence intervals are between like 1.8 to 2.5%. So from that, we were actually able to extrapolate the fishing effort in Lithuania through time, every day, through space. And so that was for the first time actually gave us really good results about the assessment of fishing effort in Lithuania. And so this is a bit of a teaser. This is not actually what I was going to show, but now I can actually say this is a teaser. So one of the things how we did was we extrapolated, we'll talk about it tomorrow, we looked at this usage of this device in 4 countries in Lithuania, and we looked at how did COVID-19 lockdowns affected recreational fishing in these 4 European countries. And basically, what you can see in here, so the dashed line shows the beginning, so recreational fishing on weekdays before the lockdown. We had 4 years of daily effort data, basically. And so on weekends, which is the red dots, is always higher than on weekdays. And you can see that basically, for example, here in Germany, during the lockdown, the effort went about 4 times, not 20%, 30%. It actually increased nearly 2 to 3 times, actually, so sort of on average. And this effort increase stayed all the way almost to the end of 2001. So there was a huge increase in effort and actually sort of slowly went down. In Lithuania, effort increased even more and it stayed high. So this is under review. So actually, okay, so basically what I wanted to say at the end, and I had another slide, was that, so this is only one set of data. We have this digital data, and then we have some way of calibrating it. But instead of this, you can think of any other data source. So we are talking about fish brain, we are talking about any kind of apps that we actually somehow can get effort data. And instead of this, yes, we had an opportunity to work with a really efficient drone company, but in reality, this could also be any other. This could be other surveys, phone surveys, and so on. So as long as we have these 2 data sources, we can use statistical methods, Bayesian statistical methods to calibrate this data and actually derive really cool estimates of angling efforts. And so I would be very keen to hear about your views about it and yeah, collaborate on this and help with at least with the statistics part of it, if you are interested in this. So yeah, but I'll skip forward and yeah, so
Okay, I have 12 slides, and I promised Valerio I would go quickly. Using app data to monitor catch effort, invasive species, and climate change. So this is maybe. So I really want to emphasize that, you know, I do a lot of this research and I'm optimistic, but I also am a realist, and there are cases when apps don't necessarily work. And that's, I think, something we need to figure out as a community, is in which circumstances do they apply and which don't they. So this is a very short talk in 3 parts. I want to summarize some work with catch and effort analyses, look at invasive species and climate change, those last 2 rehash populations, or presentations that I gave yesterday. In comparative research so far, just to be very brief, there has been research. It's been ongoing since roughly 2015, and mostly in North America, but we have examples in Europe as well. And this slide is slightly outdated. There's other research that is certainly happening. The emerging consensus, when you look across these studies, again, these are comparative studies. Can we compare the app data to what we consider to be a gold standard for getting creel effort and harvest data, something like a creel? The apps the data are certainly not from a representative sample, so that's been demonstrated and makes sense. We do get comparable results at low spatial and temporal resolution, so if you zoom out and look at the general trends, they are consistent. Not so much when you zoom in, but there are cases where it is possible to obtain comparable high resolution estimates of some of these metrics. But the app data aren't suited for everything, and so certainly, anglers are not sampling randomly, and so we've done some gillnet comparisons. There haven't been as many gillnet comparisons, but we see that in those few cases, then the app data really aren't reflecting estimates of abundance or relative community composition there. So the utility here really, it depends on the fishery, the question, and the amount or quality of data that are available. Probably the best analyses that have been done so far are from the Danish app, Fangstjournal, or Fangstjournalen, I think it is, and Christian Skov pronounced it once for me, and I think that's what I just said is way off. So we often call it the Danish app. Just like Asta only ever has a first name. Yeah. The app is uses citizen science. So it's government supported, designed by research for research. And there's one other thing. Oh, and it's for a specialized fishery, and so that's very important. So it's for the sea trout fishery on one island in Denmark. It's a large island. So there's a number of research papers that have come out describing that app some of which I'm a part of and have been lucky to be a part of. It's a really cool system and study. This is not yet published, so you're kind of getting a sneak peek on this, which is really interesting. One of the criticisms we get is and this is a valid criticism, is, okay, this is one study in 1 year, and you saw, strong correlation with the Creole survey, but is that going to be consistent every year? Is it going to vary? And so they have a number of years of data now that Casper Gundelin was able to analyze, and we're seeing fairly consistent results over those 4 years, 2020 being an exception, but that was an exceptional year for the number of trips, which we consider to be effort, and also for catches. So that dashed line there is the kind of the Creole, and then the mean and 95% confidence intervals are from the app data. In the same paper, they do it for other fisheries, because those are also being used by anglers. They're doing it for northern pike and for cod, and the correlation isn't as strong, but the usage of the app among that angling community is also really not there. So it suggests that you need a critical mass for these app data to be useful. My group is working with others on using invasive species, or using the data to understand spread of aquatic invasive species. So just a quick couple of slides here to rehash what I said yesterday, if you missed that. We wanted to compare hydrologic connectivity, streams and rivers, how those are connecting lakes versus how anglers connect lakes. And so you can see you get this nice dendritic pattern down here. This pointer doesn't seem to work on that screen. And then if you look at a map, you see that the connections are really just showing you where the basins are. There aren't a lot of connections. The app data are profoundly different when you look within anglers and how they're connecting those systems. This is the colors around that outer ring, and the numbers correspond to the major drainage basins within the United States that really aren't connected naturally, but all the connections we see within that, this is called a chord diagram, those are all by anglers moving between those systems, and all of those are fishing events. So that's a major potential for the spread of the invasive species. The red lines here, this heat map, is showing where the density of connections are relative to the superhighway. The blue is where we have, in this case, milfoil, Eurasian aquatic milfoil, and that's an invasive species there, and it's highly correlated with where the connections are, so suggesting that human boat or movement of that invasive species, and then also predicting future spread if you just focus on the gray scale area, that bar there, and then on the map. That's suggesting where we have problem areas, where there's a large number of lakes that have no invasive species but are receiving a lot of connections from lakes that do have that invasive species present in it. And so that's where those there's a concern there that you're having these proc-beagle pressure and you might have future problems. Also using the data to look into climate change. This is a freshwater story, and we're soon writing the marine story as well. It's causing detectable changes in fish abundance, so it should be potentially reflected in the recreational catch. So we were looking at those fish brain catches in the sub-basins. So there's 2,000 of them for 6 summers, 2015 to 2021. We didn't have data for all of the sub-basins, so we're asking here how warm, cool, and cold water species are trending within those sub-basins over that time period. We had the slopes here, looking across all of those sub-basins for which we had data and looking at those trends for those different species. we're asking then if we're seeing a climate change signal, are the greatest increases among warm water species? So that would be a climate change hypothesis. And likewise, if there's a lot of strong declines among species, it's potentially among the cold water species. So we're setting up that hypothesis. I'm just showing you the warm water species here just to simplify and keep things fairly short. This is the top 10% of those slopes. So for you, the right side of that distribution where the extremes are where we're getting increases within the catch, and it's disproportionately among those warm water species. Here. That dashed line is showing the expectation if it's just a random cold, cool, or warm. So a lot of warm water species seem to be increasing, and that's we can see where that is happening. And then we also looked at this among some of the more common species in the catch to try to break that down by cold, cool, and warm by species, but we don't have time for that. So very quickly want to say thank you and let Valerio take over. And I don't know why Kieran is bolded there, although I will say it's sad that he did have to leave. And these are contributors to that, the stuff I showed you. They all contributed, and it's probably not even a complete list. So thank you.
So I don't know if there are questions for Asta and Paul. You can ask those questions now. Okay, no. So the data I'm going to present you are in part published, and in part I just received them 2 days ago, so are not even analyzed. And the idea that we are pursuing in Spain, in particular in Catalonia, is to use social media data as a monitoring system for recreational fisheries and calibrate it with an ongoing monitoring program. So the government started to monitoring marine recreational fisheries in 2019. There was research before, but now this is a regular monitoring program that every year is investing into an on-site and online survey. So we are asking recreational fishers several questions in order to understand what's the usage of social media in Catalonia. So the first question that we asked, these data are published by one student of us, is if they were sharing their catches on social media. So as you can see here, at about 38% of recreational fishers are sharing catches on digital platforms, which include also private messaging platforms, such as WhatsApp, so they are not public. But then when you look at the public or semi-public social media, the percentage goes down to 21%. But most importantly, we were able to understand the profile of those fishers that are sharing catches on social media. And they were more avid, they will spend more money on the fishing trips, have a higher harvest per unit of effort, and most importantly, a greater chances to catch a trophy species. So this is a first step for then calibrating these kind of methods, maybe with statistical support of someone that has maybe experience with Bayesian methods. I'm looking there, Zach. And then we are moving to the data that we just received, and we ask other questions, or where they were sharing these catches and how often. And if you look at the data, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube are the mostly used social media. So they never shared the violet bars, but then if you look at those that sometimes share catches throughout a year, the red bar, you can see that is higher in Instagram, in particular for sometimes in a month. So what we are seeing is a shift of recreational fishers that are moving from Facebook to Instagram for sharing those catches. But then what is interesting is that if you ask them where they are consuming and how often they are consuming these social media data, the picture is totally different. So the bars that are consuming sometimes in a month or in a week or even almost every day are rising up, in particular the green bars, as you can see. So we can have an estimate of those people that are and how often they are using information on social media. And this is more or less the same picture with the online survey. And when you look at the consuming bars, you can see that YouTube, for example, is one of the most used platforms for consuming information. So the other thing that we are looking at is emblematic trophy species like snappers, the common dentex, and the dusky grouper. So the first is a snapper that is iconic for commercial and recreational fisheries, and the dusky grouper is emblematic for recreational fishes, but also for conservation. So there are a lot of conflicts around these species. Looking at the traditional survey, in particular the on-site survey, you can see that the snapper is fished more or less equally by spearfishers and boat anglers. But with the traditional on-site survey, we were not able to intercept a group of specialized recreational fishers that are shore angling for these species, which is the yellow group that we were able to identify with the social media data. And more or less the same thing with the dusky grouper. We were able to record catches of about 16 individuals of these species with the on-site survey, but we were not able to intercept another group of specialized boat anglers that are targeting the dusky grouper with emerging technology like echo sounders and living baits. So basically, just to conclude, we are showing and have suggestions that traditional survey can be complemented with social media data. We are still not able to calibrate them, but in some cases we are getting this information of specialized group of recreational fishers that are very hard to intercept with the on-site or even the online survey. And I will stop here, so I will open to receive questions from me, Paul, or Asta.
Thank you. You showed that YouTube was used for receiving information, but not for giving information as much from just looking at what you were showing in those two graphs. Do you have any idea why that might be the case? This might not be a very relevant question, but it was curious.
Yeah, basically what we showed, I just looked at the data and just plotted them with Excel, so I didn't look very carefully. We already knew that there are not many recreational fishers that are sharing their catches, but we know that they are consuming this information. So those that are sharing, I didn't show the data, are sharing information for 3 different purposes. Connecting with the peers, so just get excitement of sharing and approval from their peers. Giving information, so many of these content is tutorials, and others are searching for this information. So I think this is the most important link, in particular for other researchers, like Warren is working on these behavioral changes of recreational fishers. So we have these groups that are sharing tutorials in a way of doing sustainable recreational fishing, according to their beliefs, and there is a big group of recreational fishers that are consuming this information. I think what we are trying to show there is this connection. So it's not only sharing peers to get likes and number of comments, because they are not monetizing with this kind of volume of data, but the important connection is giving information and receiving information. And what we did with the content analysis on some papers that I will present tomorrow, we intercept this kind of exchange of information. Technology, fishing gear, but also sustainability. Way of handling the fish out to the water, so catch and release. There are a lot of information that they are exchanging without any kind of scientific knowledge. So it's a very good part for understanding social norms there.
This was all in Spain?
This is only Catalonia, so a small region of. And the other work that we have done was in Italy, in the entire country, and we have other data from Italy, Spain, and France, according to some other species.
Maybe a question here. Has anyone actually used social media data for your work? I mean, either Facebook. Maybe what were the questions?
So, we recently published something that's going to be in the special issue from the last conference, and we looked at catch and release behavior over time using Facebook for a South African shore-based recreational fishery. And we actually we used the photographs to created a series of metrics for the photographs to try and understand the behaviors that were related to the photograph. In other words, how did the angler treat the fish, etc., based on, just on a photograph, and then monitored that over time. And we found that without any intervention from scientists or anything, that particular Facebook group had actually improved their catch and release behaviors significantly over time, which was fairly interesting. But and so we used that to highlight the potential power that something like Facebook has in influencing angler behavior. If you can harness that power and actually use appropriate messaging and put it across in an appropriate way through Facebook, for example, you can really shift behavioral norms. And this was in a catch and release context, but you can use it in any context. You can use it in compliance or in any other way, potentially. So yeah. Sorry, it's Allison et al. 2023, if you want to have a look.
Anyone else wants to share their experiences about social media data? Because we have also.
Hey. We just started using some social media data, and I was actually curious. I was going to ask a question: how you guys are harvesting that data? If it's manually or through APIs, or straight from the servers, and if that's legal, and these things. Recently, we got some data from YouTube and Facebook, mainly manually, and that was basically like the number of times that a certain term was used, either in a comment or on a video title or things like that, just to show the increased trend in the use of those terms and how that relates to our fishery. Yeah, I'll be showing some of those results tomorrow on my presentation.
So, to answer the question, I mostly used YouTube using the application program interface. So you have either an R package, Tuber, but maybe there are others, which allow you, if you create a Google API key, to interface with the YouTube API. Usually they release a researcher profile for the API key, which allows you to have a higher quota for downloading data. And basically, you can download a huge part of the data. So the title, description of the video, social engagement, so number of likes, comments, and also the text of the comments. And I have a talk tomorrow. I don't know if we have the same time, but we can maybe watch each other. And we used only the title and description of the video for the moment for amassing the data about the catches, not the video content itself. And this is one way. The other way is to write your own code in Python and interface with the API, but you need some coding skills. But basic stuff, you can do that with the Tuber R package.
Are you guys planning on having a look at the video and extracting more information from the video itself?
No, just the metadata. Means that you simulate a query, a search on YouTube. He found you like 2,000 videos, and then you can download in an Excel file the metadata. So title, description, social engagement, the date and time of publication, and all the other information related to the video, but not the content and analyzing the content of the video.
So maybe to get everyone more engaged, we actually have a few questions. Now I would like you to get out your phones and answer these questions. We'll have to scan this.
Yes, can, or you can go on slido.com and use this code.
And we will see the results straight away in here. And the idea is to see, so this is the question on a scale of 1 to 5. How important do you think absent social media will be for monitoring recreational fisheries, and why? So first write the number, and then maybe in a couple of words or two or one sentence, why do you think it's important or not important? And we should be getting answers here, right, on the screen?
Yes, I will show the...
Okay, someone is typing already, yes. So we'll see whether people think it's going to be important or not.
Yeah, they have 100 characters limits, so do not write a long sentence.
So I guess we pulled this all together, apps and social media, but yeah, it's a large group of possible data, so yeah.
Sorry, is 5 most important or 1 most important?
5 most important, I think, right? Yeah, sorry. Yes, we should have probably made it clear.
Good one.
Is there a limit to how long this will go?
Oh, I think something is coming. I don't want to influence the people that...
Oh, yes, that's true. You first have to write. We can't have influence on you. All right, we'll give maybe 10 more seconds for people to finish, otherwise it might take a long time. Not loading, okay. Yeah. Now do we...
No.
Okay.
It's just reading them.
We will probably share, we can share these results with, because we have an email address of everyone. So I can see that most people, okay.
Okay. So there are some 5, 4, 2. Maybe we can pick some, these 2. And anonymous that say, for some aspects of monitoring, its success, however, will require recruitment of people with necessary skills to do this. Okay. So what kind of skills are you referring at? Anonymous?
I may have got the numbers mixed up. Did you say
Okay.
5 was the most important?
Yeah.
So that should be a 4.
No, yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
That's my comment. And the skills I'm talking about, the skills that you people have, the skills, those skills are most often found, I think, in academia, and I think that they're much more rare to find inside management agencies.
Yeah.
Familiarity with R and APIs.
So how to extract the data, but also how to analyze the data, right? How to interpret it. Is that what you were talking?
It's mainly the extraction.
Yeah.
I think getting the data.
But so do you mean then?
Particularly for the social media.
Yeah, that's right.
I think a follow-up from Matt's comment there, I think the changing dynamics in terms of...
Use the microphone because they are recording. So.
This is pretty good, so make sure it gets recorded. Okay, so just following on from Matt's work there, I think with changing platforms on the social media, with different ways of interacting with them, like with an agency, you want to have something which is going to be robust for 5, 10 years, and you can do it, you get good, but if you're changing platforms every 2 years, different interfaces, that skills up, it's just not going to get taken off as easily because of that, just that really flux skill set.
But I wonder, so what about the apps? Let's say if we're talking just about apps, and like how many people think that it's going to be important and we are going to use it in the next 5 years? Like almost everyone, right? But so would these be apps that you manage yourself, like your agency, or would these be some private apps? So how many people think that only the apps by agency that you manage yourself would be reliable? Okay, and how many people think that we can harvest from other apps? Yeah, all right, so in a way it is, so yeah, it's just how do we get that communication happening and the way of connecting with like the private apps and with other apps. I can see some,
I think that the apps where you're actually like recording a catch, like fish brain and things like that, will eventually become really important for monitoring and detecting species and doing catch if you can expand to expand from voluntary data to adjust for the bias that Paul was talking about. But what I thought was really interesting was what Valerio was showing, where people are consuming the information about how to go fishing or species to catch and exciting ways to do things on YouTube. And I think that there's an appetite out there to influence people in that way so that they can eventually report their catch via the apps or submit their data in some way. So I think that to tie those, they're slightly different things. The apps are going to be important in a long term for monitoring sense, but the social media stuff might be important right now to improve the way that people use those apps.
question that was also here.
Yeah, just another comment on the apps and whether government apps or external apps. I think, Emma, you know the stat. How many people want to share their information with government in our Fish Smart app? It's pretty low, isn't it? Like 5%. So our Fish Smart app, which is our government app, you can record your catch logs and you can tick a box to say, yeah, I want to send this to the agency. And yeah, about 5%. It's a very low percentage of people tick that box. But I think with the external apps, people may well be more likely to tick that box because they don't hate government or they don't wonder about what the data might be put to use for. So.
But so would you use that? Would you use that for management from external apps? And what are the hurdles? Like why?
We're both from New South Wales, and we're just scratching the surface on this at the moment. So we're not very far down this path. What we're looking at is mandatory reporting, and that necessarily needs to come through our app because it needs to go into our database. That's for a particular question about total catch. But for all these other metrics which are useful to consider in rec fisheries and rec fisheries management, I think external apps probably have a role in that data collection.
Thank you. I think there was a question.
Yeah, but it was from you more than
So I thought maybe I'd share what we've been planning to do. Well, we are actually busy doing the app's about to roll out this week. So we partnered with a commercial company that's providing a service to recreational anglers. So it's called Fish Finder SA, and it's essentially an app that provides really good spatial information on where to catch what, how to catch it. It's recruited angling personalities from across the country that provide videos on bait presentation and how to catch certain species, etc., etc., etc. And we were asked to join it and have happily joined it because we've built into it a component where people can add their catches in a structured way that we want the catches to look like. And in addition to that, we run a conservation page, which we're going to be using to influence behavior in some way, hopefully. But I think the important part is that our plan is to give diarists free subscriptions through funding. And we'll run a diary program through the app so that the users, the commercial guys will be happy because we'll be funding the diarist subscriptions. And then at the same time, we'll be collecting information through diarists that get the benefits of the app, but then at the same time, the ability to collect will give us the information.
So that app, Fish Finder, is not free, right?
It's not free. Yeah. They pay. And so they get, in return for entering diary data, they get a free app with a huge range of benefits to them. So we're going to, that's our plan for the next couple of years, and we'll see whether that works. But so it's a sort of a layer upon layer of things. So it's mixing a diarist approach with a social media app, and hopefully that will be successful.
I had one question this way, sorry, then I'll come your way, Patrick.
Thank you. Eija Kirjavainen from Finland, from Scandinavia. We have government app, and our parliament passed a bill, and we have now new legislation. At the beginning of the next year, we have mandatory catch reporting system, and our National Research Institute has has developed a new app, and it has been released for public, how you say it, that people can now use it, and we can get some information how we have to develop. But the reason why we end up to do the app from the government style, then the government has developed the app, is that for us it's very important that the data is owned by our government and the research institute. We cannot think about the situation that in the future our scientists, our natural research institute have to pay something to get that data for the scientific purposes. And if you think about 50 years ahead, for example, we have to know what kind of effect, for example, climate change has. We have to have that data collected and stored somehow that it's available for our scientists. Thank you.
So I think one last question, and then we move to another questions on the online survey, but you can ask it this later. One more, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, it was more a comment from earlier based on what Ingrid was asking about. Why do people consume YouTube and why do we share on everything else? I think it's because sharing on YouTube is onerous. Like if you want to put together a video and do all that editing, it takes a very small group of dedicated people to share on YouTube. But obviously that's where most of it's absorbed. And one of the things that I think that the app that Warren's working with leverages is it adds the same kind of information that you would otherwise want to consume into the app that you actually want people to share and engage with at the same time. So it's taking the pro of YouTube, which is tutorials, bait presentation, all the how-to, all the where-to information, and mixing it with the same tool that you would otherwise use to share in a community sense. So yeah. I think that's one of the secrets, I think, to encourage use and engagement with an app is to kind of appeal to both of those things at the same time.
Yeah, partially because we ask them why they are not sharing. So, and this is not the prevalent reply. Mostly it's because they don't want to share the information with other fishers, but most importantly with external people, government, let's say. So they don't want to share what they do. But and also in a small proportion, it's what you said, because if you look at Instagram, which is easier to share, you know, not to build a video with a music and whatever, they are sharing more on Instagram than YouTube.
And in South Africa, so, WhatsApp is like pervasive for sharing, and not to individuals, not one-on-one, in large groups. WhatsApp's even, well, in South Africa, I don't know if it's everywhere, but has doubled the group size allowance recently. So now you can have groups of 500 participants in very specific categories and regions. So we have like Port Elizabeth surf fishing group.
Yeah, a species, a group for a specific species. That's quite common.
Hundreds of those, but I don't know how on earth we use that data because that's semi-private, semi-public.
That's semi-private. You mean it means that even if it's a public group on Facebook, if you're using this data, you need to be careful about the privacy and legal issues because they are not aware that you are using this data.
Yeah.
So the next couple of questions
were
sort of mostly looking, maybe what are the biggest hurdles? And maybe we will actually leave the results coming through so we can see them because it's hard to read all of them. So what specifically prevents you? Maybe if you write just in 1 or 2 words or in a couple of words, what specifically prevents you from actually using the app data, social media data? We heard already some things, but
no, it's the same. You should be able to see the question in the same poll.
What about within the government apps if you set up those species-specific chat forums? So people know that it is a government forum, but potentially there's a willingness to contribute and be engaged in discussion as well, and another incentive for uptake and usage.
Yeah, well, I agree, but I think it's also, you know, if I do it already on Facebook and I have all my followers there or on Instagram, I find that a lot of people, why do I need to do it on yet another one? And so it's just how many of these apps are you going to suppose you
I guess you may connect with others that you wouldn't through your own Facebook.
Yeah, possibly.
Well, as development costs of things like that is really high, and the social media companies can do it because they can harvest the data to sell adverts to you. But as a government, you're not doing that, and so it just becomes this huge cost sink for very little benefit to you in terms of the data that you can get.
And also like small things of, you know, the interface, how the line button looks, and all sorts of other things. Plus, someone has to always monitor the feedback, right? So you have to always see that you know, people don't post bad images, that people also have, there is a constant work to engage with that. So yeah, bias, ground truthing,
Yeah.
ethics.
I have a question about this because maybe we are naive, but from a statistical point of view, with Bayesian approach, if you calibrate the population that is sharing, you should be able, maybe with a big error, to have a prediction of what is going on in the real population.
Yeah.
So yeah, probably you need more skills than coding for developing these kind of models. But no, this should be possible.
Yeah.
I'm looking at you because I know you have the expertise, but maybe there are other people with this kind of expertise.
So I think the issue with trust comes down to where this information is being used. So if it's being used in a context of resource allocation, you're typically in a room or a forum where you've got managers, representatives from the commercial and the recreational fishers. So it's not that you need to reassure data quality to the research scientists. It's you need to reassure data quality to the stakeholders and the managers. Managers would be very reluctant to make a decision on changing resource allocation if the stakeholders don't believe that the data quality meets certain standards.
And I agree, and I think that this is sort of two big steps. One is actually for general research about, two big steps. One is for general research about angler behavior and so on, and a much bigger hurdle to actually make political, resource allocation decisions based on this data. But on the other hand, if this could potentially provide us with huge amounts of information, and if we could do a good job with ground truthing, I mean, then of course maybe that would be useful. But so I guess from what I'm reading, a lot of people basically, so what I can see it's mostly like IT skills, access, how do we access this data, and also how we trust and correct for biases of this data. And so it's not surprising that these are the biggest questions that are coming through, and that's where perhaps most of the work has to be done in the nearest future, where we're also working on this topic. So yeah.
And then we have another one.
Well, this is actually, I don't know if you feel like what exactly would be needed. So if let's say I have a new project starting and I want to write another application, what exactly do you think would be useful for you if I, as a group of researchers, if we could deliver to help use this data, this sort of data for management? I don't promise that we will. But we'll try.
Yeah, there was partially answers in the previous questions. It's the tech, so maybe a platform in which you can get the data already aggregated, probably.
I think we just write more papers.
That's the solution.
We need examples. We need examples from all over the world of different ideas.
Yes, that's getting people to actually use it. I 100% agree with that. So that's again engagement, but that's almost like a social question. What would actually motivate to engage anglers to use it, and why would they use it, and why would they not use it? Standard stat exchange.
I think it's what you're touching on around the confidence in your statistical approach, to take it from a novel-based approach to a accepted, utilised within fisheries management would be really handy. Like here's a structure, what you can apply to your data, bring it up that level, move it beyond novel.
And also, like I was thinking, it would be useful to know, let's say, if it's 1% of anglers who are using it, I don't know, someone said 5%. I don't think that's a lot, actually, 5% of anglers using it. Yeah, but that's a lot. I think that's a lot. And so I think this the Danish app, Fangsjournalen, which is also pronounced not like that, they achieve, so if they achieve 5 to 10% participation rate, that's huge, like huge success, they believe.
Around 8%.
I have a question for Warren and your group. Did you engage with the government regarding your social media insights into recreational fisheries?
No, not at all.
Because you think they will not trust, or they will not like this kind of data, or because you didn't think?
No, I didn't believe they'd be interested. That's the main reason. But our relationship with the South African government is a difficult one, because their recreational fisheries are not really considered to be important. So, but what we're doing is we're sort of moving around it by focusing on normative interventions and self-reform within the angling public, and the kind of research that we're doing is directly related to self-reform. You know, just ways of getting anglers to fix themselves, rather than making the government do it. And I think there's room for both in any context, even if you've got a brilliant government. You know, you still need anglers to be willing to do it themselves to make real change. So, anyway, let's.
So
we have 5 minutes. Yeah.
A lot of time. So one thing I wanted to mention is that we actually started a series. We started an online workshop. Sorry, I keep forgetting. We started an online workshop run in December where we discussed these sort of usage of apps for management, and it was just a small plan to get group of researchers and managers together, and I think it was extremely successful. If you can go back to my slides, because actually I think all slides were from that workshop, so somehow it all got mixed up. But the name of the workshop, and it's all on YouTube, it has been watched already 400 times, I can see. So if you are interested, and so there were a lot of interesting presentations of how this sort of data could be used and what are the challenges, and it seems that maybe just before there was the name of it, just even before, this one, yeah. So, and can citizen science and smartphone apps and social media data be used in management? So you can email me if you are interested in this, and I will include you in the next mailing list. So this is like now I'm sending around the email addresses so people can interact and communicate, because it was very popular. It looks like we'll be running maybe every 3 months or something like that. So again, I am happy if you're happy to be sent, like if you are happy, there are email addresses here. Sometimes they're written by hand, so sometimes you can make mistakes.
Yeah, I will double check.
Yeah.
I'm always conscious of talking at these things. So in Australia, we currently have a Director of Fisheries digital working group that's chaired out of Queensland. That Queensland group at the moment is developing a set of interoperable standards for sharing government data. There's another project that we're doing with the state governments, which is called the Australian Data Exchange, which collects into IMOS, the Integrated Marine Observing System, and Australian Ocean Data Network to make all publicly pre-competitive data freely accessible based on certificates of use. So that means anybody who wants to develop an app can take the data and build whatever experience they want with people. They would have to, obviously, if they want to create a private benefit out of it, they'd have to negotiate use of the data. So that's one of the things we're doing. Part of that exchange will also have a series of policies and procedures to ensure that people who want to develop or do things have actually there's a policy on data security that's been developed that everyone can share, a procedure on how you should share data, best practice for cybersecurity on cybersecurity, and the exchange itself with the Australian Ocean Data Network and the Global Ocean Observing System, the really benefit about that is by using people like Amazon Web Services, etc., we're actually lifting the security at the highest level so that the biggest people are paying for security, if that makes sense. And I think the last thing, the policy I think most of us are trying to work on with apps is to develop, to make ourselves agnostic to apps. In fact, what we're trying to do is we'd love the world to be full of apps that deliver user experience, because at the end of the day, we actually think apps will create a much more healthier workplace, from marine safety to sharing things with people and family, etc. So we think it will connect people, and that's why we would like to be agnostic to apps and just encourage people to make sure that the public data can be freely accessible. The bit that we're really struggling with, and I have to tell you, is how to use the data for fisheries management. Because fisheries management data requires a certain structure to how data gets collected, and that's still the bit, if anybody's smart enough to work it out through biases, etc. I think that will be the real challenge, because often with these data sets, they're not as structured as what we want for fisheries management. But I think we'll get there. And I think the big game will be, if anyone is watching the National Marine Science Committee with baselines at the moment, we've just put out our baselines report run by lovely Rachel out of New South Wales DPI. And so we're starting to develop citizen science-based baselines for people who want to use like drop-line cameras to record things, so you can actually record your drop-line data on species, but you can standardise it so the data can be shared, and we can all agree that's the sharing of that data. And so I think those sorts of things are coming, and I think the conference is starting to draw out the fact that everyone in the world is doing these things, and the bigger the market you've got, the more likely you'll actually be able to pay for the cost of delivering that type of, because they're not cheap to do these things. If I was asked myself right now what the two things I would love to see these things really develop, one is to improve marine safety for rec sector. It's still a big problem for us in the country. And the second one is to improve our knowledge of basically stock health. They're the two big ones that we're interested, but yeah, this is a big issue. So it's been really interesting today to hear.
When you say safety, what are you referring to?
So we still have a lot of people dying at sea, rock fishing.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's some great apps now. Everyone knows things like Decky in Australia. There's some really good apps that are being developed, basically to give people a time ahead about when certain weather events are going to go, or don't go out.
But I agree about using the data for management and standardization and addressing biases. So yeah, we need to work on that.
I just had a question, might be a stupid question, but question for the Brains Trust up the front while we got you all in the one place. What's the opportunity here to use this data, maybe social media data more so than app data, for compliance work? So if we had a mandatory reporting app, and people are supposed to report against their catch, against their name, is there something, some AI that can go through social media, pull out people's names and catches of particular species that they're supposed to report, and use that to look at a proportion of those records that actually occurred in the mandatory collected data.
In Europe,
and does that raise ethical concerns?
In Europe, you cannot. So I have some colleagues in Finland that are working on illegal trading of animal products using social media, and many times the authorities ask for this kind of data, they never share that, because the grant agreement, according to the privacy issue, does not allow them to share this data. So this should be a police activity that should do that, but not researcher.
And also if you work with the companies like Deeper, for example, and we could, in theory, get information about when people are fishing illegally in some places, but we never look at that information because that will totally break the trust and the relationship with the company. So we just sort of, and people will also, their clients may not actually like the fact that this data is being used this way. So again, you have to be very careful about it.
Likewise.
Great, cheers. So I noticed in your responses that were coming up, there were a lot of things coming across saying, you need Bayesian techniques and things like that to try and mitigate some of the bias, and R packages to really help you do it. I just want to say there are things available out there. So without wanting to auto-cite too much, I gave a talk yesterday on multi-level regression and post-stratification. And it's a really nice way of trying to correct for some of the bias that you might be seeing in this app data. But just like with any model, you kind of if you put crap data into it, you're going to get crap data out of it. So you do need to still need to be careful. So I just wanted to say, there are these tools available, and you just have to look around for them. But if you want to learn more, I think all the talks are recorded, so feel free to watch mine.
And mine tomorrow.
Yeah, and yours tomorrow.
And Warren has a question.
So I just wanted to comment on that compliance story that you were talking about. And I think where you could potentially consider compliance app is literally having people with the ability to have an app to geolocate where non-compliance is occurring, and then over time build up a record of where your most prominent non-compliance hotspots are, what times they are, and then you can strategize in terms of your enforcement. You know, and that would, you'd be able to improve compliance activities without, you know, having the issue of prosecuting individual people.
It's mainly about compliance if you have a mandatory catch, a mandatory reporting requirement. Sorry. Yeah, it's mainly compliance. What I was thinking about is that if you have a mandatory requirement to report your catch, you know, is there some way in which we could see, okay, well, it looks like 95% of people might be reporting their catch by looking at social media, and, you know, maybe 95% of the names that report a species, yeah, have appeared in the mandatory catch database. Yeah, just chewing the idea really in the open.
Yeah,
maybe it's not wise.
In terms of apps, it depends from the terms and conditions of the app when they sign in. Social media, again, it depends. You need to check the terms and conditions of the platform, which are changing regularly, and usually most of them, they have this reasonable expectation of privacy, which means that you cannot use this information for that kind of. If the people that are doing this illegal activity got damaged from this not expectation of privacy, you can get in trouble. And there are some examples, not in recreational fishing, in which this occurred legally.
It was more so for correction of the mandatory reported data.
Yeah.
Than enforcement action.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I suppose in terms of assessing the bias, right? So that would be perhaps in this way that would be possible to assess the bias of the assessment. And then you would see how many people caught it and let's say many people are sharing pictures of undersized fish, and yet everybody reporting that they got, you know, the right size. So yeah. But actually, so we are finished. So perhaps if people want to stay and continue discussion, we're happy to continue here, or we can go to a pub to continue next to here. Or if people want to leave and get ready for the party, that's as well nice.
Sorry, guys, just on behalf of the Victorian Fisheries Authority, I'd like to thank Valerio and his colleagues for today's presentation and the workshop, and thanks to everyone's contribution to the workshop as well. I think it's been really good. There's been a lot of productive discussion, I think, and that's the end of the formal part of the conference for today. But yeah, just everyone going to the gala dinner tonight. I'm sure you'll have a wonderful time, and if you're not, there's plenty of other great things to do in Melbourne. So thank you. Have a good evening.
Yeah. Thanks.